Hi everybody, it's Shane Whaley for Spybrary. I'm coming to you from the steps of the College of Arms here in the city of London because recently we hopped into our Spybrary time machine, went back to 1963 and got our hands on Her Majesty's Secret Service. This was the 11th Bond book written by Ian Fleming. In it, Bond meets his archnemesis Blofeld. He even falls in love. We see an emotional side to Bond here, but don't worry, it's full of high-octane action, stunning Alpine settings, and yes, heraldry. Joining me on this episode of the Bond Book Club is David Craggs, author Andy Onyx, and head of the Hildebrand Group, Ian Douglas. So I'm just off for a brandy with Sir Hilary Bray, so I better put my posh voice on and make sure I've got my etiquette together, because, you know, it's Sir Hilary. And you strap yourself in for this episode of the Bond Book Club. Thank you for your support of Spybrary. This is our last episode for 2024. We will see you in 2025. Spybrary and the James Bond Book Club will return.
Do you love spy books, movies, and TV? Then the Spybrary podcast is for you.
All right, David, fill us in. What's been happening with Ian Fleming of late?
Well, I haven't seen the old boy this year, but he did invite me to the premiere of the movie last year in October. I didn't see you three there, so I guess you didn't get your invites, but I was there, and I must say it was something of an event. Ian actually turned up with his number two, with his guest, and it was Somerset Maugham, which is very interesting. It was at the Odeon in Leicester Square in London, and it was a fine event. I did manage to grab a minute with him and ask him about what his plans were for his latest book, and he'd actually written it last year in January, February, when he'd been over in Jamaica. And that had been at exactly the same time that they'd been shooting the movie. So it's interesting to consider what effect that's had on him and what effect it's had on his writing, and we'll come to that later. But basically, in terms of the book, what he said, he was very proud of it. He said he regards it as his best yet. He doesn't like to discuss The Spy Who Loved Me too much. I think the reviews, and particularly your review, Shane, was very hurtful, you know? So I don't think you're going to be invited to anything anytime soon. But I did excuse you, and I said, you know, that you'd had second thoughts since then, and you'd given it a second read, and you'd seen some merit in it. But anyway, that withstanding, he was on fine form. He didn't look that great physically, I have to say, but that's been a long-standing thing now for a while. And he's also got the trial looming at the end of this year over that Thunderball issue. But anyway, in terms of the book, he said he's very, very proud of it. The initial title he had for it was The Bells of Hell. That was the initial title of the book. But he's obviously changed that to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, as we now know from our advanced copies. And he said, you know, really that I hope you enjoy it. He thinks it's his best. And, you know, he's forgiven you for your bad review, Shane. You know, so all's good.
Well, thank you for being the diplomat as ever. I haven't completely changed my view on it, but if it helps Ian and puts a smile on his face, then I maybe get an invite to the next premiere, because I'm sure there's more there in the offing. But wow, so, and it's interesting about the title, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, because I read somewhere, and maybe you can corroborate this the next time you meet him, is that this he was going to go with the title you suggested. Then a friend of his saw a book in Portobello Road Market about a sailing adventure that had written years ago called On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And apparently that
is exactly what happened.
Right.
That is exactly what provoked the change, yes.
So let's start. Andy, for you overall, this book, how was it for you having read your way through Spy Who Loved Me?
Well, frankly, the last few have been very uneven, haven't they? You know, I mean, they've had some good ideas, but overall, I think since Russia with Love, we've been largely disappointed, with the exception of the short story collection that he did, For Your Eyes Only. For me, I thought with Ian being so stung by the last affair, I'm not on about his other affairs, but his the Spy Who Loved Me affair, and the actual realization of his dream of getting to the cinema. I just think he's come out like this Cassius Clay guy in a red bow tie. He's come out. He seemed to come out the trap on fire, you know, swinging. I mean, the book's peppered with bloody exclamation marks, which tells me that he was really enjoying himself as he wrote it, that his tail was up. Yeah, so that's my. I mean, I could go further, but that's my overall view of it. I actually really enjoyed the book. I did groan a little when we were introduced to Mr. Draco, because I thought we've just got a resurrection of Darko Kareem here.
Yes.
Yeah. It was almost like he'd regretted killing Darko Kareem off, really, that he would like to have brought him back, or bring back Blanco, his blonde-haired brother. But
so let me ask you on that note.
Yeah.
There was another character in this book that reminded me of a previous character. I wonder if we all thought the same. I'm not going to say the name just yet. Any shouts? Did any of the characters remind you of? Sorry,
Bunt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who did she remind you of?
Rosa Klebb, yeah.
Rosa Klebb, yeah.
Rosa Klebb, yeah, very similar. So it's like he's drawn on that well again. We'll get on to her in a moment, but
I was in the minority, and I liked his. I liked The Spy Who Loved Me just because it was different, and I liked the short stories. I liked the fact that he was trying something different, but I was quite relieved that he got back to his former style, and I think this is possibly his best. I think it's up there with From Russia with Love. I think it may become my favourite overall. I enjoyed it. I thought it's very well written, and as Andy said, it sounded like he was enjoying writing it. He's given Bond a lot more humanity. He's kind of fleshed out his character a bit more. I liked Draco, whatever his name is. I thought he was a good character. I liked him. I liked Tracy. I thought it was, it was a good story, good plot. I liked the whole College of Arms and the heraldry aspect. Hilary Bray. I did wonder how come Blofeld didn't know what James Bond looked like, because although they've never met before, have they? But I think he would have known what he looked like just because of the Thunderball affair. So that was a bit odd, but I could easily ignore that. And it was great, and it was obviously a very tragic ending. And I liked the idea of Bond kind of settling down and wanting to settle down, and it just seemed. But then it just seemed like too much of a happy ending, so that, of course, could never happen. So it does feel like it's lined up for a sequel with a bit of a revenge theme to it. So I think possibly his best yet.
Wow, that's high accolade coming from you. How about yourself, David?
Personally, I thought it was a triumph. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, the writing is off the Richter scale. When he opens up in Royal Les Heures, when Bond is reflecting on his childhood, I think it's some of the finest writing that I've read in the thriller world. Actually, it was extremely good and very, very heartfelt, and the whole thing was laced with melancholy. And he tied it brilliantly to Casino Royale.
Yes.
I mean, we didn't realise that Bond had come back there every year to lay flowers at the grave of
Ah.
Vesper Lind. And then, you know, it just went on from there. I mean, he was obviously the whole thing revolves around Operation Bedlam, which follows on directly from Thunderball. It's the chase to find Ernst Stravo Blofeld, and he handles the whole thing in a terrific way. I thought the way that it kicked off with Tracy overtaking him when he was on the road to Royal Lesur in her Lancia, and how they met at the casino, how Bond saves her from disgrace at the tables, how he then goes on to save her from suicide. And, you know, it really is. It's a phenomenal entree to what I think is his best work. And I think it's a very well balanced story as well. It never flags. Yes, I also thought that the plotting was really quite deft. The idea that sort of, you know, that, I mean, Bond at the beginning wants to resign because he feels that there's no point in this detective work. He's convinced that Spectre no longer exists, and he's convinced that Blofeld no longer exists. And he, you know, the writing of the resignation letter. It's really heart-rending stuff. It's very, very good. And then how he gets back into the game, you know, when he meets Marc-Ange Draco, is really well done. It's really well crafted.
But before we get to that,
Yeah.
again, Ian's on familiar ground, right? He's describing a game, Chemin de Fer, that I don't know how to play. I didn't know how to play bridge when I read Moonraker. I don't particularly know a great deal about golf and other things. Unlike you, David, I don't get to go to these fancy casinos, so I don't know what it means like to have no cash on you. If, you know, how bad is it? Not being able to pay your gambling debts at a casino.
Oh, it's complete disgrace. I mean, you would be persona non grata across internationally. You know, it's there's no bigger sin at the tables.
Bond is in a very peculiar place. As you just mentioned, David, there's memories of Vesper, there's him at Royal Lesau. He's been very reflective, but he's in a very different mood, isn't he? He says at one point that one of the reasons that he does go steaming in these missions is that he has no one to care for him, no one to love him, nobody at home. We're seeing a very different Bond from Casino Royale. You know, all these books later, we are seeing this change in him, aren't we?
Oh, it's very melancholy, you know, and or very melancholic, and it's. I thought he was a little like that at the end of Casino Royale.
Yeah.
And, you know, we have seen instances of reflections throughout the books, but I think this really fleshes out the character in a much bigger way. It's you know, it's extremely well done. And I think that we learn about Bond's childhood, which has never been touched on before. We actually learn about his heritage. It's the first time, to my knowledge, that we know of his parentage, with his father being a Scot. And I wonder actually if Ian hasn't done that because of the influence of the movie.
Yeah,
You know, with Sean Connery, to sort of
100%.
characters closer together, the cinema character and the literary character. Because the other thing which is interesting is, of course, Ursula Andress gets a mention in the book as well, which is another, you know, sort of tie-in, if you like, with bringing the movie world closer to the literary world.
And I imagine Ian has a soft spot for her.
Not be so soft, actually, but it certainly got a spot for her. You know, that's for sure. You know.
Yeah.
He likes Melodious, doesn't he?
Yes, yes, yes,
Did you
yes.
think that when he meets Teresa, Tracy, and this wonderful chase, that there was a bit of an allegory between this old Bentley, because back in was it Goldfinger, where he had this lovely Aston Martin, which is a cutting edge car for this decade, this new decade of the 60s. Then he's gone back to the Bentley in the previous book, and he's back in it was like, here he is in this wartime older guy, and she seemed to be represented in white Lancia Spider Zagato, luxury brand, cutting edge. Did you feel there was a bit of an allegory there between the old and the new at all?
Whereas the Bentley, albeit it's a newer version, is his personal car.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, Bond is, well, I don't know whether the age mismatch was actually mentioned in in the story, but from memory, wasn't Tracy in her mid
Yeah, I think
20s?
she was mid-20s.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
And I
there's a
mean,
sense that Bond's getting older, isn't there? Like,
yeah, Bond's getting
just
older.
hints of it, really.
So yeah, I think there was a sort of, there is a sort of I wouldn't call it a generational. Just there's certainly a difference between old money and new money as well, I
Yeah,
would say. I mean, she's been living the life fantastic with all these playboys and so on and so forth, whereas Bond has been on Her Majesty's Secret Service and been in the service of the country. So I think Bond would regard a lot of her friends as being sort of quite frivolous, whereas he's much more of his own man, if you like. But yeah, it's certainly a broadening of the character. We know a lot more about Bond, I think, now.
We also know he doesn't like laces in his shoes, David, apparently, he says, and he washes his hair with Pinot Elixir. Have you ever had your hair washed with Pinot Elixir?
Is Pinot a man or a woman?
That's the brand. He calls it elixir of shampoos,
Oh,
apparently.
I'm much more an Abit Rouge man myself.
but there's
Isn't it
also
But the
interesting?
other thing he says, the other thing he says, which kind of made me giggle, and I'd love to get your reaction to it. He talks about how he eats at home, quite basic, with his eggs and so forth. But when he's working, he eats well. And to me, as a salesman, it's like he's just eating it up when he's on expenses, right, and enjoying it.
Well, that's true. It also shows how he kind of demonstrates he's not bothered about money. Although he lives the high life, he's quite frugal. The way he lives his own life when he's at home, he's not impressed by money, is he? And he turns down, was it £1 million from Draco to marry his daughter? So he's quite principled about money, I think.
You're right.
Yes.
He dwells quite a lot on to do with the College of Arms thing, snobbery and vanity, and he points to the fact that this is looking like that's been the undoing of Blofeld. Is his vanity, his wish to be the big man, to be the title, obviously to melt into this other countship or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's interesting as well that M, when we actually catch up with him and M, that Bond tells us in his own thoughts that he sees the equal threat to society as being Blofeld and beatniks. So it's like, are we going to see Bond getting stuck into the beatniks next time, or what? I thought it was very of the moment.
Very true. So let's move on to Draco. So how was that scene for you, where James is brought, shall we say, collected and brought, rather roughly, to meet him? How was that scene? How was that interplay for you all? Why don't you kick us off, Ian?
I enjoyed it. I think I do. I mean, I know we mentioned how Draco's a bit like Kerim Bay, but I must admit, when I read it, I didn't really think about that. I can see the similarities, but I thought he's a really he's a likable character, and he's a big character. He's the head of the Corsican mafia, but his one big love is his daughter, and of course he sees her going off the rails, and she's obviously had a fair bit of tragedy with her own life, being left with a baby that sadly died in infancy, and he just wants her to be happy, and he wants her to be with the right man who can look after her, treat her well, make her happy. That's his kind of main goal in life. He's earned plenty of money. He's richer than most people. He's obviously dodgy. He's a criminal, but he still seems to have some kind of goodness about him, some humanity, some likability. So I really like that scene, and I like the fact that Bond wasn't cowed by him. He stood his ground. He said, "I don't want the money," but he showed a lot of empathy in that he wanted to help her. Once he knew the full story, he wanted to help her out. I thought it was a really lovely scene.
How about you, David?
No, I thought it was very well done. The character is really a man's man. I mean, Draco is a man's man, and Bond is a man's man. So you can sort of understand how they would be a fit and how there would be a level of respect there. And of course, Bond immediately says that he's not the man to look after Tracy in the long term because, he has his own life and so on and so forth. And, he turns down, the offer of a phenomenal amount of money. I mean, £1 million, it's unimaginable. But he turns that down. But nonetheless, as Ian pointed out, he shows empathy, and he does what he can, to help out. He suggests, which is taken up, that she is looked after professionally in Switzerland, and that she gets some therapy, which I thought was a very modern invention. I didn't realize you could have this therapy, but there you go. She goes off to Switzerland for that. And at that stage, they part. I mean, obviously, he knows that he can get from Draco the whereabouts. Well, he doesn't know, but he asks when Draco says, "Is there anything I can do for you?" He says, "Yes, I've been looking out for this guy. You may have heard of the Thunderball affair, Spectre, and obviously Draco has lost some men to Spectre, so he has no love for Spectre, and he happens to have some sort of steer that he's in Switzerland, and that brings the whole thing alive, as we know, and the plot moves, to the next stage." Before
we get to that stage, which is for me, it's at the College of Arms, so they have this scene where we actually learn a little more about M, don't we?
Yes.
We go to his house.
Yeah.
And I think what I learned is I don't want to spend Christmas with the old bugger.
No crackers.
No crackers. He's all right with a glass of sherry or something, but no hats or anything.
I know.
He drinks cheap red wine, doesn't he? Is it the Infuriator or something?
Isn't it Algerian or something that he drank in the Navy and kept them afloat? I really enjoyed that scene. You go to M's house, which is very much like, a ship, and his butler, whoever used to work with him in the Navy, and I forget the title, but yeah.
And he collects he collects butterflies, doesn't he? And he's he paints, and he's an unusual character.
Yeah,
very unusual. And we also learn, because Ponsonby has got herself married, right? So Ponsonby is gone.
Yes, she's got a new secretary.
Mary Goodnight.
Good night.
And
yes.
we also learned that M's been given another gong, and people are writing to him to congratulate, and he's not even opening the envelopes. He's getting them just to throw them away. So it's like, again, a bit like with Bond with money. M doesn't want the praise. He sees it again as his duty. He shouldn't be getting congratulated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's another little nice insight into M, isn't it?
There's a kind of modesty about him, isn't there? And he just sees all that stuff as slightly pointless, a bit embarrassing, and it just makes him grumpy, doesn't it?
It's
interesting.
Yes. It's interesting though that Bond stroke Ian supposes that he, on the finances of M's salary as a senior civil servant, that he would need to have a few favours and a few, not exactly brown envelopes, but a few favours to have this place out in the countryside, because he's literally of quite limited means, really. He's got his Navy pension, and
it suggests a level of inherited wealth.
Possibly,
that allows him to have the London house and the place in the country.
Quarterback.
Yes,
he's a bachelor, isn't he? He never married.
I thought he was
no,
widowed.
absolutely not.
I'm not sure.
I don't recall that being married.
I don't know. I'm just trying to remember. What do they call his housekeeper and his?
Is it the Simpsons?
Mrs. Hammond, isn't it?
Hammond. Yeah.
That's
Hammond.
It. Yeah, the Hammonds. Yeah. Yes. No, I think he's very sort of typical of that generation that's been through the war, and has a very sort of strong moral compass, but a very sort of puritanical,
very Puritan, yeah,
modern moral compass, and I think that it sort of contrasts very well with Bond, who clearly has a different approach, to life, particularly when it comes to
with the ladies.
Yes, when it comes to
and
I don't know. M's a bit of a gambler, but I think sort of Bond is perhaps symptomatic of, a more modern man in a way.
Yeah, he's a younger man,
albeit still a man very rooted in the 50s with a wartime background himself. But yes.
How were the passages for you at the College of Heraldry?
Well, to be honest, as I said, once I'd got to the bit with Draco, I was beginning to lose a bit of interest, because, as with the other novels, we were getting to a little bit of a stage of rehashing things. So when it actually went to the College of Arms and the actual plot of this mechanism to get to Blofeld, it really got it. That's when I was hooked. I thought that was really clever and something different that he hasn't touched on before, because I was like, where are we going with this? So I thought that whole plot was great. But coming to where you mentioned before about Bond's introduction to Draco in this large mobile home, I loved that bit of action whereby Bond rolls. He's got this concealed blade, and he throws the blade into the calendar. He chooses the date. He aims for 16. He gets 15. So the action's doing the talking here. You said a little while ago, man's man to man's man. Well, he's shown this fella immediately he can do it. Yeah,
he can mix it.
He can mix it, and that's a great departure from Bozo Bond, who we had in the last book. Yeah, who either didn't want to shoot anybody or couldn't shoot straight, and so again, the focus has been pulled back, and this really is the same character that we saw in For Your Eyes Only, and we definitely saw in From Russia with Love. But the College of Arms, for me, Shane, it didn't bore me because it was something new. These eccentric characters, Basilisk and what was the other one? they're basically named. They're like ceremonial names, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
That
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
connected with the
Sable Basilisk is one.
That's it, you know,
Yeah.
and the other one, they're ceremonial names connected to. But I
The other one
thought
was a nuisance. That's what he was.
that,
The other one was a nuisance. Let me go see the man. You're stopping me in the hallway here. I'm not interested. I got a job.
exactly. But that didn't drive me well. I thought it was all like Ian's writing generally. It was very, very visual. Some of the writing on here, though, is really, as just to second what David has said, is off the scale. The childhood recollections, which are nothing to do with sex and sadism, are they? You know. Later on in the book, we got a phenomenal Fleming swoop. I think it was from chapter 16 into 17, and both 17 and 18, when we're cascading down the slopes. My goodness me! I mean, I think this movie has really set Ian on fire with this. I really do, because that scene whereby there's the chase, and then there's the snowplow that catches the fella, and then there's the fountain of blood. A jump across a speeding train. I mean, I haven't even seen anything like that at the cinema, guys. Have you seen
Talk
anything like
about
that at the cinema? And this is in
no,
a
I
book.
mean,
Well, apparently he did escape an avalanche near Kitzbühel, I think it was, in the
Right.
Austrian Alps. He had a close brush with an avalanche. So he is writing very much, because I thought, wow, this is very graphic. You almost feel the snow coming up at you and
Yes.
the trees coming up at you. And I'm someone who's never skied, but even for myself, this was exciting. But apparently a lot of it is based on personal recollection, which it sounds
no,
horrifying,
but I mean,
doesn't it?
to pick up on what Andy was saying, I think the action sequences in this are really, really the best. When
is
he
good.
escapes, for what if we go to the whole Piz Gloria thing, post heraldry, obviously he goes to the top of the mountain, he's helicoptered in, etc., to Blofeld's lair, if you like, at Piz Gloria, and there are a couple of I mean the inadvertent blundering in of the agent from the local station
Oh,
that Bond has to
yeah.
ignore, and as a consequence, he's sort of murdered by the henchman. Was really quite blood curdling.
Mm.
But when it came to Bond's escape, I mean, that whole scene on the mountain when he was skiing down was just absolutely phenomenal.
Brilliant.
I've never seen action written quite as
Mm.
well as that before. You really felt that you were in the skis. You know, your legs were aching with him, and then the avalanche. I mean, you know, to have an event described so well, and with such momentum and such. I mean, with Bond trying to escape the avalanche, it was just absolutely fantastic.
Mm.
I really, really thought it was out
And
of
it's
all of. He's always been good at action sequences. If you cast your mind back to Moonraker and the car chase and all things like that, he's always been good at action sequences. But I felt that this went to yet another level.
yes.
It was extremely well done, brilliantly written, and extremely thrilling, which at the end of the day is what a thriller's all about. And then, you know, for him to, at the bottom of the mountain, for him to reconnect with Tracy was just great, you know,
Yeah.
and,
And
yeah,
he's really hanging out there, isn't it? He's really
yeah,
he
He's
is
on his last
battered.
legs.
He's in his
yes,
legs like
yeah,
he's it's like when the fella says get up, get on the rink, and he tells him to pee off. You know, it can hardly
yeah,
stand. And the fact that
yes,
she
yeah,
comes across the rink in this pink parka,
yeah,
he must have lifted
yeah,
his mask, or she can see that it's him. But and again, then there's a further chase with Spectre.
yes,
The Spectre guys
yeah,
spot them, don't they? They're following
Yes.
that whole thing.
Yeah.
That whole thing for me, I just thought, yes, you've really knocked it out the park on this. The way he changes the jump, tells her to jump, he pull in, he changes the signs.
Mm.
Even the description of the Spectre Mercedes crashing and tumbling and tumbling and crashing down the ravine. You know, I mean, God, you know, if anyone can
Good
put this
stuff.
on the silver screen, I think you might have a winner if they do any
Yeah.
more of these. You
Well,
know,
I think when he was
Yeah.
writing it, he was possibly thinking about, because by then he's having conversations about making films, and he's thinking, well, the next book, if I write it as if I can imagine it on the screen, I think that's possibly where he was going, thinking this is a lot more visual than previous books, the action
And
sequences.
also
Yes.
some of the
Yeah.
you're right, Ian, because the locations as well. If you think of it, you got Royal Ezo, and then you're back in London, then you're
Yeah.
in the Alps,
Yeah, I
at
mean,
Peace
beautiful
Gloria.
locations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Germany.
exotic.
Yeah. Now, and to Ian's point, actually, remember that Thunderball was supposed to be the film,
Yeah.
and obviously
first one.
that's got bogged down in all manner of stuff.
Mm.
And Thunderball as a novel was very filmic in a certain
Yeah,
way. You know,
especially the
it was
locations.
yeah. But this one is even more so. Yeah, one can very much imagine an adaptation to the screen. But no, it was the action sequences were superb, and the branding. I mean,
Yeah.
there are more brands in this than you can shake a stick at. You know.
Not to mention booze, David. I mean, he must be
Oh,
permanently
oh,
smashed. The amount of
oh,
I want to go back and have a drink every time he does.
yes, yes.
He's
He should have
definitely
done
got
that
a
for the
problem, hasn't
recording.
he? He's
Yeah.
definitely got a problem. I mean, you were saying
Uh,
Shane back at M's place, and after Christmas dinner, I said, "Oh, should we have a cup of coffee, or would you rather have a stiff whiskey?" He says, "Yeah, you know me, boss. You know."
There is a lot of alcohol in
I
this
mean,
one.
he
yeah,
doesn't
He's a
describe.
functioning
He's always saying
alcoholic
this.
in this, right?
He always says
yeah.
his cruel mouth. He doesn't say he's got the cruel mouth and a big red ooter, does he? You know.
And then describes whiskey as rock gut, doesn't he? He's not a
That's
fan.
right.
Yeah.
Not a fan.
No.
But he likes that Algerian
Yeah, the
wine.
old infuriator. That's enough for him.
Racket.
Small glass of infuriator. That'll do.
I think you got to go to some of those stores, those shops in Soho there, and not those ones, but the other ones where you can get the alcohol. Maybe they'll have some infuriator in there.
Yeah.
We'll get a fine Algerian bar somewhere. They must be there
Yeah.
in
Cheap red
Compton
wine.
Street somewhere.
But he
Have a
manages.
go
He
on that.
manages just to keep control, doesn't he? Because despite his intake of booze, every time he's behind Bunt, he wants to give her a kick up the bunt, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time he's
Yes.
behind, every time he's like he's got to resist booting her. You know?
Yes, yes.
We've jumped
Yeah,
a
but
bit,
it's
but I think you've mentioned, one of the standout scenes. If you were to ask to someone, it's like, what stands out in this novel? It would be that action sequence. It would be the escape in the Alps.
Yeah.
For me,
really.
though, one of the standout scenes, and this shows that Fleming, some critics say he's just a Fantasyland writer and men's adventure. That one scene with the poor chap from Station Z,
Yes.
Sean Campbell, when they
Yes.
dragged him in, he's obviously surveilling Bond. He's keeping
Yes.
an eye on Blofeld. They drag him in front of Bond. You know this guy, and Bond's having to say he doesn't know him, and he does, and he knows that they're both going to get killed if he says he does know him. But just the anguish of having to, and the poor guy's so out because you know me. And
Yeah.
I just thought that was tremendous bit of writing and very very taut, very suspenseful.
And he knows that he may have to sacrifice. Well, he will have to sacrifice Campbell's life, but it will save lots of other lives, and it'll stop Blofeld. So it's a calculated risk, isn't it? He hates doing it. But
Yeah.
he knows he has to do it.
It's
Yeah.
the first chink in the armour, though, isn't it? Because Bunt and Blofeld immediately think they've picked up on it, haven't they?
Yeah.
They've seen something pass between them.
Yeah.
He's just said, "Oh, he must have thought I'm his brother or something like that."
Yeah.
And then the other fella comes over, doesn't he? And he says, "Are you're Hilary Bray?" And he says,
That's
"Yeah."
my cousin.
What, the Hilary Bray? And he's thinking, "Shh, yeah."
Yeah. He manages to get
And,
out of that one.
He does. He's
Just.
quick, thinks on
Only
his feet
just.
and gets out of that, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Brilliant writing.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. So we get Hilary Bray in Pete's Gloria. We get our first look at Blofeld here, and he's a wee bit different from Thunderball, isn't he? In that he's dropped a ton of weight. I'd love to know what diet he is on. He's got the green lenses or something to disguise his eyes,
Contacts,
and his earlobes are missing.
Yeah, he's had those
Got long
removed.
hair, long silver
So very,
hair.
very different from what Bond maybe expected. How was Blofeld for you, Ian?
In some ways, it felt like he was quite a weak character compared to the others. It's not, I mean, probably not as strong as he was in Thunderball. He just seemed a bit more visual there. Although Bond didn't meet him then, but he just, I don't know, he seemed like he was quite charming but untrustworthy. And most of what you got about his personality, like he was kind of insecure, he was vain, he wanted this, he wanted to become a count, he wanted to be accepted. And he just seemed like a slightly weak character, bit of an egomaniac, but obviously very successful at the crime and the extortion, all of that stuff. He was good enough, but I thought he was one of the weaker characters, if I'm honest.
Do you think it was like the implied menace because you heard about the blood-curdling
and you
death
didn't
of the
really
henchman and
witness
tried it on?
until there was a bit of a chase, and towards the later scenes. Early on, he just seemed quite an amiable guy, willing to work with Hilary Bray as he thought he was. Didn't really get too much of his personality, but you always kind of knew that it was him, but he was hiding his true self. But okay, I mean, it was.
Yeah. How about you, Andy?
Well, when we first met Blofeld in Thunderball, I didn't really enjoy Thunderball as a novel, to be honest, but I did really enjoy the part in Paris where we met the Spectre organisation for the first time, and it's explained in detail what it is, who Blofeld is, his actual outreach, his strength, his power. Again, he is a man who is bizarrely not motivated, it would appear, by finance or anything else. It's almost like a power trip, for the man who's got everything. I like the fact that his appearance had changed. I thought that he was a more charismatic character this time. And I did find myself casting my mind back and thinking, hang on a minute, these two didn't actually meet in Thunderball, did they? It was
Largo.
I can't remember the name of the villain. Largo, that's
Largo,
right. It was Largo who's the main guy. So Bond and Blofeld didn't meet. The other question that I kind of had, and it's a bit of a plot problem, was that Bond kind of said he wants to get out there, identify him, and somehow get him across the border into Germany where we can pick him up because he's in neutral Switzerland, I'd imagine. So the question there, I mean, I'm ruining it really, but the question there is Bond an assassin, or is he, what is his job? Because he's within a few feet of him. He's only got 8 men there. So he could have took him out. He's gone in that room one-on-one to have the assessment regarding the heraldry and everything. If he's going to take him out, he could have took him out, sneaked out the back, got his skis and gone, But I think in terms of jeopardy, it was the fact that Bond's right up there all on his own, trying to sell a pack of lies. It's very difficult. You can only get up there by chopper. You can only get down there by doing what he did in very extreme circumstances. The fact that he had to memorize the map. Remember the different metal maps, the black route, the red route, all the rest of it. So that was that. But yeah, for me, Blofeld, he wasn't as frightening maybe as the gangsters that we saw last time. He's not a frightening guy. It's all about power with Blofeld, isn't it? He's not going to do it to you. He's going to get someone else to do it to you, And if you're caught, you're going to be overpowered. Look what happened to the guy from Sean Campbell there. Like Bond said, it's better one of us goes than both of us go.
How about you, David? How's Blofeld for you?
Well, he's a different type of villain, because if you think about it, everything up to Spectre was linked one way or another to Russia. They were all linked to the KGB. They were all linked to our big Cold War enemy, the Russians. This is a departure because this is really about terrorism. And Andy questioned the motives of Blofeld. What are the motives of Blofeld? And it's clearly about disruption, power, and extortion. It's about terrorism. And what motivates and what drives somebody to do that is an interesting question. It's clearly a huge power thing, and it's a sort of megalomania. You can imagine, that sort of individual wanting to be the head of a major country. So if he wasn't doing this, he might want to be president of the United States.
I think what's interesting as well is this whole he wants to be a count. Like, it's, of course, you got this snobbery angle that Ian addresses in the book, but also he clearly thinks whatever scheme he's hatched, that it's going to be successful, because clearly this is he's going to want a pardon or something, so that you can't walk about as a count if you're being chased from continent to continent, can you? So he's obviously he feels confident that he's going to be able to walk the streets as Count de Blauchamp.
Yeah, it's deluded though, isn't it?
It stated back in Thunderball. I think when we met him, I think we were told that he has no interest even in sex. He's like asexual. So it's almost like he has no vices. He has no, yet this vanity is the chink in his armor, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
And he's not political either, is he? It's just about his self, his ego and his power.
Which is quite clever of Ian, because if he had made him political, then that might draw sympathy from some quarters and alien others. The fact he's almost like, he's just a stereotypical supervillain, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a mercenary.
Yeah, he's got the German warfare planned using mind tricks and hypnotherapy, which is something I know very little about, other than
he's a disruptor.
At the circus with the guy with the watch. Sorry, David, we lost you there. You're trying to chip in. One of you at a time, please, gentlemen. Or I have to call Irma in.
Well, no. One of the things that Bond mentions when he meets him is that he thinks he has a syphilitic sore.
Yeah,
yes, which actually is linked to insanity.
Mm.
It is a disease that begets insanity.
Mm.
So I think there's a clear implication there that he's not
asexual, is he?
He could very well be barking mad.
Well, Bond is referred to as the girlfriend at one point, isn't she? And I don't know if it's Bond that describes her as his girlfriend.
I know,
Old letterbox mouth.
Yes, yeah. But there you go.
Excellent. So this book really is kind of two stories, isn't it? You've got the hunt for Blofeld, and then you've got the Tracy story as well.
Yes. The love story, yes.
The love story, very much so.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So, it struck me as quite odd that if you go back to Casino Royale, Tracy's probably like the last woman he'd want to be with or be near. But here you have someone who needs help, is a cry for distress, a cry for help. And it just seems that he's evolved as a person in all this time of the books have been written.
Yeah, he's matured, hasn't he?
And he's in a different place in life.
Yeah.
And Tracy. Go on, David.
Well, virtually all of Bond's women have had a broken wing.
Yeah.
They've all had, some element of distress, etc. And Tracy's no exception. But I think what he sees in Tracy is a girl that has the same love of adventure that he sees a girl that won't tie him down, that will accept his job, and that will be um, as independent as he is when he's not there. And although she clearly is really quite damaged when she meets him, after her time in Switzerland, Bond sees a revived Tracy, and that's the one that he really falls in love with, and he sees his female life partner. He sees somebody that, unlike everybody he's met before, this is a woman that he could spend his life with. Somebody that has the same appetites as him, somebody that has the same desire for adventure, which is very important to him, and that won't tie him down. That's really the thing. And it's really a match made in heaven, and it works very, very well.
It
So
does.
it's quick. It's a quick love affair.
Yeah. And when I was reading it, David, I'm like, oh gosh, this must be the last one he's writing, because if he dances off happily ever after with, like, he's not going to be able to do all these missions if he's got a wife that he loves at home. It's going to completely affect his performance in the field, and we know he's already ready to resign. So I was thinking, until we got to the very end of this book, that, oh, maybe this is it.
Well, the end is really something else.
We'll get onto that in a minute. We'll leave that to the end.
I disagree, actually, because I think that he saw the opposite. He saw that he could continue with her, that he could continue with Universal Export. He could have his life, and that she wasn't the sort of woman that was going to object to that. She was the sort of woman that was going to embrace it in a certain way.
Yeah.
And that's what made it work.
But he's already saying in there that the reason he steams in is because he doesn't have anyone at home to care about him. How will that affect him? It's all very well saying that. This is just going through my head. It's like, you say that when push comes to shove. Heaven forbid, what if he has kids, David? He's not going to be jumping off mountains and bobsleigh rides if he's got kids at home, is he?
His biggest worry is how it's going to affect May.
Yeah.
Yes.
Remember. That's his biggest concern, how it's going to affect May, his housekeeper.
Absolutely. Yeah, his Scottish housekeeper. So let's talk about the storming of Pete's Gloria. How was that for you, Ian?
It was good. It was. I thought it might be a bit more spectacular, a bit bigger. It seemed to happen quickly, and it seemed to concentrate more on Bond chasing Blofeld down the bobsled run, which was great. I thought it was a really good scene. But it seemed to concentrate on that rather than the actual taking of his glory, which seemed to be just happening in the background. They blow it up or whatever they do. It doesn't really go into too much detail. You don't really know what's happened to Bunt. But I didn't mind, because I love the whole bobsled scene. It was really well written. And, you look at a bobsled run and you think, well, that looks quite easy. You just get on your metal tray and go down this hill. But of course, there's a lot more to it. It's very, very dangerous. And I think he really brought that out in the writing. And it looked really painful, the whole thing. And of course, in the end, he didn't catch Blofeld. So it was a great scene, but it was quite good the way they left it so that something else could happen later on in the book.
About you, Andy, how was the siege for yourself?
Well, I liked the build-up to it. I liked the fact that Ian had thought out how we're going to get from A to B, and then he's got Mark Ange that's calling in a favour with a fascist duke who's got a Chinook hidden in the barn or whatever it is. But it was the numbers side of it, really. The fact that Bond estimated that Blofeld had only got 8 men up there, and so I wasn't really clear how many men Mark Andrews took, whether he wants to make it 3-1 or whatever. And when I like the fact that Ian considered he's got to cross international airspace, and they needed a backup for that. I thought that was quite amusing, that they kept throwing excuse after excuse after excuse, knowing that then they start getting buzzed. Yeah. So I thought that was very good. They come into land unchallenged, and they sort of line up his men against the Spectre men, which I thought was a bit odd. But they invented a bureau, didn't they? They said we're from the Alpine something
Yeah.
or the bureau.
Alpine Police Patrol.
They've never heard
Yes.
of it. Then off it goes, and like Ian said, then it's just basically Bond spots either Blofeld or Bunce. I think he sees Blofeld's profile, doesn't he? This hooked syphilitic nose,
Yeah.
and off they go. So again, I think if it comes to, if they do any more of these movies, that's going to have to be a much more spectacular affair, isn't it? You know, yeah. But I like the idea, and I also liked at the end where Bond comes to the end of his ordeal and he looks up and he sees the chopper go over.
Mm.
So he's like, yeah, they made it.
Yeah.
You know, very well thought out.
What
for me.
we haven't mentioned thus far, because we're getting to the end now, but what we haven't mentioned is the central premise of the plot, where Blofeld has these sort of hand-picked English maidens in Peace Gloria that
One of them's
have
Irish, David.
allergies. Pardon?
One of them's Irish.
Yes, Irish. One of them is Irish. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the potato famine that have been handpicked for their allergies, and that Blofeld's plan is sort of bioterrorism through agriculture to send them back to. And I thought, now, what do we think about that? Is it far-fetched? I mean, could you ever imagine a situation where a virus is let loose by an organization or a I mean, I'm sure that would never happen. I mean, you wouldn't have something that sort of jumped from bats that created thousands of people to be killed in the world. I mean, that will
It'll
never
never
happen.
happen.
But he
Never
already
happen.
states that the Ag and Fish man says they put a D notice out to suppress the
Yes,
previous outbreak.
Mm.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
So that was really, I thought that was, initially I thought it was far-fetched, and then when I read it, I thought, no, this could be, because Ian has a lot of these ideas based on his wartime experiences as well. Was that something that was contemplated?
Well, it's interesting you say that, David, because I love history, and I was reading up that there was actually a Alpine resort, and forgive me, I forget the name of it. And during the war, the Nazis took it over and used it for very sinister purposes connected to German warfare. So Ian's obviously got wind of that, and you wonder, was that the catalyst of the idea?
Mm.
Again, a lot of this is based in truth, right?
Could well be, yeah.
What
Yeah.
did you think, guys? What did you think to? Was it Ruby who kept nipping into him and Ruby kept nipping into each other's rooms, and these rooms can only be opened from the outside,
Yeah.
and they've got an electronic eye there, and it's like, well, I hope the hallway lights off because. What do you think to that? And they keep nipping into the bathroom and turning the taps on to talk, don't they? And everything.
There's a bit of humour there. I liked it. I like those things.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that you had to steal a bit of, what was it, a bit of plastic or something to make
Yes.
pick the locks.
Open the door.
Yeah,
yes.
and then he realised that it would go missing, and it had been realised. So he fessed up and said, "Oh, I just needed a ruler for my work."
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really clever stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is good. I recognize we're almost at the hour mark, so I do want to come to the end of the book, and I'll go clockwise this time with you, David. How was this ending, this conclusion for you of On Her Majesty's Secret Service?
I thought it was quite devastating. It really was completely unexpected, and I mean, I was really shocked by it, and it's left me really looking forward to what happens next, because surely this can't be the end. But this is going to have a massive effect on Bond. And I thought it was, again, I thought it was well done. I thought it was very well done. And, you know, but I was very shocked by it.
Yeah. Andy, how about yourself?
Well, I liked it. I thought it was the suddenness of the attack by Blofeld. The fact that we see this red car, it's coming, then it draws level, and then I think the words are the windscreen explodes, and next thing Bond is being brought round. But I had to read it. The last paragraph, I had to read it several times because it wasn't that implicit to me that I had to. It took me a while to understand that Tracy was dead. You know, he kind of, to an extreme, showed without telling on that. So I kind of felt it was a little strange and shocking, but shocking not in a hysterical way, in a numbing way, if that makes sense.
Mm.
In a numbing way, that we just see him there and she's just sleeping. You know, she'll be okay. Like he's almost had a nervous breakdown on the spot because he's in his early 40s. He's really, we've followed him all the way through these books, being dragged across coral reefs, thrown in things, scorched in tunnels, being tortured, carpet beaters, bloody bobsleigh run this time, and now his wife's been taken like that by someone who really he should have took care of. You know, he should have killed Blofeld when he had his chance. Will he? I mean, you often have said year on year, David, when we've got together annually to discuss these new publications, that you often say at the end, well, he's done the next one. So where are we? Has he, you know, is he due to go to Jamaica again? And what?
Oh, no, I mean, it's already happened. There's another one
Right.
on its way.
Okay.
But I've no idea at all, you know, what it entails. I mean, one has to assume it will continue the pursuit of Blofeld. I mean, it has to after this. But just to go back on the event itself, because I omitted to mention it, of course, it was all doubly bad because we had the marriage just before all of this, you know, which was really great, and it made you feel happy for the young couple and all things like that. And then wham, this happens. It was really, really, really tough. Yes, and I do think that the next one will undoubtedly be the pursuit of Blofeld. It has to be.
Ian,
And
how about yourself?
It's yeah.
Go on, Andy.
I was just going to say that without backtracking too much, it was emphasised right at the end in their conversations as I think they were going to the car after the ceremony. And she said implicit, I'm like a military wife. She said, you know, I'm not going to try and pull your teeth or your claws or whatever. You know, you want to go on operations, you're going to be going on operations. You know, I'll take you just as you are, and you take me as I am. You know. It'd probably be all over in 3 months. You know. Go on, Ian. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I thought it was very well done. It was obviously it was heartbreaking. It was shocking, and yet there were hints in the lead up to this. You know, there were the hints of a toad-like figure watching them from a doorway or
Yeah.
something, and then somebody asking questions about the marriage and where it's going to be, and then you see these two characters in a petrol station in a car. One of them, the woman, not too shapely, I think his phrase was, or something like that. So you knew that on that respect, that there was something that was going to happen, some jeopardy. But also, there was that sense of, well, you can't see how Bond is just going to settle into domestic life, you know, moving out to the suburbs, having kids, going to PTA meetings, taking his daughter to ballet lessons or anything. It kind of made sense, although it was heartbreaking and very sad that she died. It kind of made sense in the whole the series that, you know, of the books. So it was very sad, and I think, I really liked Tracy. I thought she was compatible with Bond. She was like his female equivalent, if you like. They were the right sort of match of characters, but it kind of in some ways felt inevitable. The only thing I thought, what did Andy mention this, is when Bond came round and he said, "Oh, it's okay, she's only sleeping," or something. It just seemed a bit odd that would be his reaction. I mean, he knew she was dead, but we have all the time in the world. Well, you don't, do you? Because she's dead and you're alive. It just seemed an odd way to finish the book. But it's a great line. We have all the time in the world. It's a really nice line, but doesn't quite make sense to me.
Yeah, it's like he's gone. It's like he's just
he's in denial, isn't he?
He's gone. Yeah, He's
So you wonder what's going to happen next. Will he recover from this quickly? Will he want revenge? I'm interested to see what the next book is like. It could be very interesting.
I find it interesting that this book is called On Majesty's Secret Service, because you just think the next one is this going to be a mission of personal vengeance rather than working on it. I mean, obviously the government want him, but they've taken his missus out, right, because of his work. And, that could be that vendetta. He's in, and a lot more, he's ready to resign because he's bored, right? Yeah. 2 years of chasing Blofeld. Now he ain't going to be bored. No. He's going to continue to hunt this guy down. He
wants to get him, and Bunt as well.
Yeah.
He wants to kick a butt.
Absolutely. So, overall then, of all the books we've read, where does On Her Majesty's Secret Service fit in? Andy, I'll go with you first. Where are you putting it?
I would put it's got the benefit of all the other books behind it, hasn't it, in reality? And it's also got the benefit of the new cinematic version. So I would put it up there, probably top, neck and neck with From Russia with Love, I would say. But it's got the benefit, as I say, Betty, Tower Cinema Skegness, she said they can't get enough of this film, and people can't get enough of this book. So I would put it at, I'd say it's the best thing he's done, with the benefit of what's behind it.
How about you, David?
I'll get my coat.
Well, I agree with Andy, actually. I think that From Russia with Love and this one are the two finest, and I think probably this slightly has the edge. I think it's one of the best thrillers I've ever read, actually. It's very, very good. I think, yes, it's got to be. I mean, you can vacillate between Moonraker, From Russia with Love. He's done some. We're forgetting some of the good ones, and how excited we were 10 years ago to read Casino Royale. It's been a fantastic journey doing this with Ian's books. But I think this one is probably the best thus far. It's very good.
I can't disagree with either of you. I think it's probably his best. Apart from this, I would say From Russia with Love was my favourite up until now. I'm also a big fan of Thunderball and Dr. No, even Goldfinger. But I think this slightly edges it over From Russia with Love. I think I'll probably have to read both of them again to make a fair judgment, but it's definitely top two, and it very, very well might be the best I think he's done so far.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll top it now. And unless this, the next one's a revenge thriller that I can't see how he can make it any better, to be honest. I'd be surprised.
Lovely cover as well. Cover as well by Chopping as well.
Yeah, really good. No, an excellent book.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fast-paced thriller. I think you can overlook some of the weakness in some parts of the plot around Blofeld. For me, it still felt a little bit weird, maybe because I've never fallen in love that fast before. How quickly he fell for Tracy. But I also, I beg your pardon?
You haven't lived then.
No, I have not lived, clearly. So, you know, I don't go to casinos like David and the like here, so that's why I don't bump into these sorts. But no, it worked as a good thriller, and I think also it would be in top 3 for me. I still think at this moment in time, Moonraker and The Spy from Russia with Love actually edges it. But like you said, on another reread, those 3 could shuffle for me right now of where we are. I'm excited to see what's ahead, and I'm really chuffed that he's going to write another one. But it's going to be hard to displace those 3 for me. Excellent. Well, gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you. Thank you. And we'll get together for the next one, right? Whenever that will be. And I hope Ian's health holds up, David, because you seem a bit worried.
Well, fingers crossed. But we'll see next year. We'll see in 1964 what happens.
It should give him a boost anyway. So off the back of the nightmare of the last one, it should give him a boost.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, especially with the movie and the book. I mean, I just think it's just going to make him a household name.
Very exciting.
Already.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Take care, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next year.